like what are you monitoring? How do you set up like alerts in terms of like application syncing and things like that? Prometheus, right? Like all the kind of stuff where it's like past almost like past day two, right? Like it would be like kind of okay, like now that I'm up and running, like
Now what?
what now what now not what do I do? So this chapter was kind of dedicated to things like monitoring, high availability, messaging, things like that, right? And so yeah, so that's kind of what the idea was behind this chapter, right? And so kind of like the now what. I think it was summed up perfectly with Andy. It was like now what, right? I'm up and running. Now what?
So I'm going to give some context. Let me see if my mic works. Some context in terms of like uh, this is control plane. Like this, you can say in it's like CI/CD or the CD part of the application promoting. But in some organizations, people and it was some education that we did. At least personally, I did in some organizations 5 years ago. Was that the CI/CD pipelines, your Jenkins service, that if it was down for one day, some leaders thought that it was not important because the service is up and running. Customers can log in into the system. We're still making revenue. But with some books and a lot of blog posts, right? A lot of companies like start being educated that if this software, right, the CI pipeline is down, it means a lot of developers are blocked, and that means it needs to be treated as production. So that's where like some of the DevOps teams and platform teams started like,
Yep.
this is what is the product that you work on? Well, I work on an internal product. Which product is the DevOps build system or the promotion system, and it's the day two
Hmm.
operations, and it needs to be highly available. People need to be paged if that thing is down, because in large organizations
Yep.
you have 5,000 developers, right? You have software that needs to be patched. You need to use software that needs, so it's if it's down, production is down. And so it's hard to articulate that to some organizations that are small, maybe.
Yeah.
um,
Well, yeah. And you touched on an interesting point, and I'm gonna pull on Andy here. I'm gonna pull the audience here in terms of like running production systems. Like as a platform engineer, DevOps engineer, whatever, right? Whatever we call ourselves nowadays. We like almost everything is like production because it just depends on who is affecting it, right? So like you have like I remember like having a large kind of development platform, right? And like when that went down, it felt like production was down because having 50 developers sitting there doing nothing is a big deal, right? Like it I always say like it depends who's yelling at you, right? Because if production goes down, software engineer actually don't really care all that much because they're working on their thing, but the business side is really 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 pissed off because they're the site's down for whatever reason. So um yeah, Sevia, I'll tell you a story. Well, maybe at KubeCon one day, how I was supporting a ton of developers. But like it's kind of like explaining how yeah. Anyways, you were just kind of touched like I wonder how many people here are running systems where like no matter what goes down, it feels like production is down because that's how it feels sometimes. Especially especially for me with the systems that I used to run.
It's also developers can find you in the hallway and just do whatever they want to do to you if system is down. So you need them first be working on something else and not chase you all your life in that organization.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Yeah.
yep. So anyone wants to put comments in the chat, or verbally say,
It's a
if you have
massive
organizations that
waste
treat the
of money
CI/CD
and time.
pipeline
Yeah,
as
yeah,
production.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, this is why. And then you took in a you talk about monitoring. I think the first thing is how do you monitor, right? That some teams just go and if they have a small number of Argo apps, like at the end of the day, you're like monitoring the pods that run Argo and the objects, and these objects are the Argo apps and the application sets. So have you seen people use the Argo CD UI? I see that it's mentioned here as a Kubernetes monitoring. Like if they want to know if the apps are okay, or healthy, they go to the Argo CD UI, because Argo CD surfaces some of that
Yeah.
status of
So
the deployment, right?
so definitely, I've seen it for two reasons. One, not everyone has access to a dashboard. I
Yep.
mean, Kubernetes by default has no dashboard. You can add the Kubernetes dashboard. You can add another. If you have an enterprise platform, they probably have their own console of some sort. But not everyone's going to have a Grafana set of dashboards. So, um, this is a good way for developers to get easy access to seeing what the operational health of their resources are.
Yeah.
Also, I see kind of to do a yes and to Andy is kind of like it's usually what I see is kind of the first point of triage. And if it needs to go any deeper, you can, but like it's definitely kind of like you log in, like the first thing you do, if something goes wrong, you log into the Argo CD UI and kind of just see, right? Because it gives you kind of a holistic view of kind of your application as a whole, right? Because like there's, like you said, there's like, individual components that make up your application. And components meaning Kubernetes objects. And then from there, you have a kind of like a good, there you can, either go into logs or if anything else. It's a good jumping off point for sure.
And then you mentioned something around like using things like Prometheus and Grafana, that things may have a green checkbox, but what if they're slow? Like to sync something, right? It's taking more than it used to, or like it's not syncing sometimes, or just the performance, right? When you're at scale, and the UI can only manage, I don't know, like 2,000 Argo apps, roughly.
Mhm.
Um, then you have start like having multiple copies of Argo CD in your enterprise. Then the central, like the same way as applications, right? You want to have a central place, and Prometheus and Grafana is very popular, but you can monitor um, Argo CD with doesn't have to be Prometheus or Grafana, because the components of Argo CD, they emit metrics that are Prometheus format, but there's many tools, right? Your Sysdig. What else, Christian? Like people used to monitor Argo CD.
Ooh, I mean, there's a lot, right? It's really to monitor Argo CD. I think the thing I see there is Prometheus, right? There's also like Datadog, because I know that Datadog has hooks into Argo CD. Like they have like a lot of things that are hooked to Argo CD. So I see actually from like the top, like 2 or 3 that I see is definitely Prometheus, but then Datadog as well is another one. Not
Hotel
sure.
or open auto
Oh,
collector,
oh
right?
yeah,
That's the
yeah,
most.
yeah.
A lot of
Hotel,
people are
yeah,
moving to
yeah,
that, of
yeah,
collecting, scraping all these spots with that. And but yeah, in the book, it's good that you put the mention that the Argo project ships with an example Grafana dashboard, the JSON file. It's in the repo. I believe Intuit
yep,
was making some updates last time we met in the SIG scalability, but it's provided there. I did some reach out to another project in the CNCF. Trying to remember the name, but it's like declarative way of defining dashboards. I think it's called
yeah,
Certis or something like that.
yeah. I've
Um,
seen that. Yeah,
that you can, because this .json is actually, it's a blob. If anyone familiar with put in the chat, if you're familiar with the Grafana format of these .json files, they're not very declarative. Is somebody going to tweak one of these Grafana dashboards?
yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
like you
treated
said,
as
it's a blob for sure. And it's always a good starting point. I always put that, be like you said, because Intuit basically provides kind of like what they use, and I think for anyone it's a good starting point.
Yep. And then the good thing is in the book and the repo, we saw this week somebody was actually using, going through the examples and using the GitHub repo. That
Yeah,
is with the book, you show how to install Prometheus stack, which is, I think, what the most popular way, or like learning tool, and actually people use it in production, of like getting the whole stack up and running. And it's this Helm chart called Prometheus stack, and it comes from the Prometheus project. It's officially maintained, I believe, right, Andy or
yeah,
Christian?
Yeah, they maintain the whole thing, and as you said, it's just a collection of tools that the project, basically promotes as everything you need to have a comprehensive monitoring and alerting system.
Yeah, and it comes with Grafana. One thing that I will point out, there's also a something that I use in production in some of the solutions that I do. It's the Grafana operator. That is basically you can create CRs to deploy these dashboards that will make it a little bit more GitOps. Like if you want to deploy this stack and the
Hmm.
dashboards, you can install the Grafana operator. This one installs the Grafana, but you can have the Grafana operator act on it and then like talk to this Grafana to deploy it. Um, and then a little bit of we have some books already. We talk about Prometheus and observability, but this is something that it comes in the Helm values file. Like this is how you typically I
Yeah.
do it to enable
Yeah.
metrics, right? That's not enabled by default. I'm trying to remember.
It is. It is not. And if you're not using Helm to install Argo CD, I feel bad for you. Just because just setting it up, just with straight YAML, there's like a lot of moving pieces. And again, just grateful for the Helm chart maintainers in the Argo project, because you just put enabled equals true, and they kind of take care of all that for you.
I think this is a great tip. I don't know if Andy has also to add, but I also when I tell end users that are like setting up Argo CD in production, I told them just the Helm chart because a lot of the configuration that you will find from examples and solutions is easy to override those values and configure it through the Helm chart. And the Helm chart is now an official Argo project, and there's maintainers and there's
Yep.
a lot automation.
There is a reason why we chose to highlight that as the install method of choice in the book. We feel
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
confident that it should be the way that you install Argo.
Yep.
And it's, can you talk about like why do we add this label release and then the name of the release of that Prometheus installation?
That's how it extrapolates all the information it needs. So basically, it goes and it looks up the information it needs to provide the proper YAML configuration file. So whatever you name the release, you just make sure you use that same name in that section. That's what's being called out there.
I see.
Yeah.
You were going to say something, Andy?
Nope, you're good.
And then this one is assuming that you're following the steps in the book, right? You already installed Argo CD, so you can do an Argo CD upgrade and pass in the values that YAML for the service monitor, where it's going to install the service monitors, like the Helm charts install service
Yeah.
monitors.
This installs the service
Interesting.
monitors. Yeah.
Okay, so the Helm chart is like comes at bells and whistles, right? It also comes
Yep.
with service monitors that the Prometheus operator will act on it, and it will be able to find that start like scraping the slash metrics on the services like the app controller, the app repo, like all these pods, deployments and stateful sets from the Argo projects, and it would
Yeah.
create these match labels. Like this is something that if you're setting up Argo CD, be aware that if something's not running, double check that the labels that the service monitor is looking up is match the service Argo CD when you install it. That's something that myself and other people like hit a problem at what stuff is not working is because of that. And also for Prometheus, be aware that Prometheus by default doesn't scrape everything. So you have to also configure that. But that's Prometheus and Grafana. And then yeah, Andy and Christian show how easily you can like port forward from your CAN cluster the Grafana UI, which I'm surprised. I now I know that it has a light version. I used to use the dark version, the dark mode.
Yeah. There's and I had to fake this a little bit because there's no way to set to light mode, or at least I didn't find it with the Helm chart. So I actually went back and
The toggle
set it to
the
light
setting.
mode.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a
But the
toggle
default is
setting.
dark
Yeah.
mode, right?
The
Okay.
default is dark mode.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't show well in the
It's
screenshot.
weird because it's like inverse every other console, which is light mode.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yep.
um, So yeah, you get the dashboard, and this is super important. You want to talk a little bit like what are the things that this Argo CD dashboard actually gives people when they start using it.
Yeah, by default, like the application, like it monitors the application controller, the API controller, all the different components, right? So like the CPU utilization, and things like that, right? It'll also monitor like how many applications you have, which one is taking up time. So kind of like there's like questions that you have, right? Like, oh, if I have like a sync that's running a long time, or a sync that's using a lot of memory, or you can kind of go into these dashboards and dig down, right? And so it is actually monitoring like the individual components, and the individual metrics for those components.
Um, there's a question in the chat. I can repeat it from chat tab. Will Argo CD ever look into pushing metrics to Prometheus remote writes? It it's become more of a standard than scraping endpoints or using service spot monitors. I have my own opinions on
I
this,
have
but
my
I'll let
opinions as
Christian and the
well, because by doing the push, you're then putting more onus on Argo versus just exposing metrics and having people just consume it.
Yeah, I don't know if
that makes sense.
yeah, I actually don't even know if they're moving to that model. But yeah, it's so it's like they're talking about, so this is kind of like a push model instead of like the scrape model, basically having Argo push data into Prometheus.
Yeah, I think that Shana, you can share like where you heard this about becoming more standard than scraping, because my understanding for the few years I've been working on this, and my experiences from when I was maintainer of Knative, we try to do uh, Prometheus, well, was open census, but then Prometheus, uh, pushing metrics to a Prometheus gateway, for example. That's how you're going to get it out. You get into trouble because of times and the timestamps, and out of times, that coordination of like just making sure that the times that you push are the times that is received, and the time that you're getting that metric, it gets it complicated at scale to push that information in terms of like synchronization. The second thing is, like Andy said, like you're making more work on the software to push, because it does that. Also the flexibility of like how often are you going to push, 1 hour, 2 minutes, and then you have to change the software. So I think the practice have been, you let the software be, it has an endpoint, and whoever, multiple people, multiple systems can scrape at their own pace what the information they need. So it's just like one API and get added there. So that's
So
my opinion.
I'll at least tell you one example of where remote writes are being used, like in my world. So I come from the Red Hat or OpenShift world, and one use case of a remote write is we've started to introduce more of OpenTelemetry, as we mentioned earlier. So we have our monitoring stack by default is Prometheus stack, and you can use a remote write to get metrics out of OpenShift into an OpenTelemetry collector. So that's one example that we see, at least in the field.
Yeah, and also the the push in open telemetry, there's the concept of pipes. Like it has like it's collecting things but also transforming and then push into something else. So that's kind of a transformation type of thing. But I think I've seen like the the app and the workers and the pods that you don't want to mess a lot with them, and also you want to be flexible. Like if you need to scrape faster or slower, you can do that without changing the software, touching the software that is running in production, right? Um, but good thing, good discussion there. But what I've seen in practice from a lot of does Argo supports all-tail metrics? Argo CD exposed an endpoint with the Prometheus format, and all-tail uses that. I don't know what are the all-tail metrics format is. Seifert is asking, does Argo supports all-tail metrics? Christian and Andy.
Good question. I don't know offhand.
I know Prometheus is a format for OTel. I can't
Yeah.
say
Hi, good afternoon, morning. I think Prometheus, Prometheus format and OpenTelemetry are a little bit too different. They are not the same, but if maybe Argo CD only expose them as Prometheus format, maybe you need in the between like some kind of conversion to convert those metric into OpenTelemetry format because yeah, they are not the same format.
Okay, I learned something new. But yeah, I usually configure OTel to scrape Prometheus endpoints because people have them from the longest time and they're not going to change the endpoint. But I don't. There might be a transformation there that then OTel can do. But so far in Argo CD, uh, we use the standard Go libraries that do the instrumentation on the controllers and then expose the slash metrics. And it's not specific to OTel. I think just the Prometheus instrumentation. Good,
I know
good question.
you can. I know Prometheus has support for receiving OTel, which makes me think that it can go the opposite way too.
Ah, okay, yeah. And Shabbat said that there's products that I can do the transformation from Prometheus to OTel. So I'm guessing that OTel also has that thing.
Yeah.
Moving along, notifications. Like, did people know? Put in the chat if you knew that Argo CD uh, incorporates another project called Argo CD notifications in it, and you can send notifications about your Argo apps.
I had no idea about this
Yeah.
till I
Uh,
read this chapter. Yeah.
Argo CD is a project that I have seen from the sidelines that very permissive of ideas. Like, you want notifications? Sure, we'll have notifications. Has a lot of
Mhm.
features. Like, that's to a point. I think at one time I said Argo is an Argo CD, or maybe you want to add up Argo CD, Argo reference, Argo rollouts. In terms of features, complexity, configuration, it's I think at the same level as Kubernetes. I don't know. I might be wrong, but it has so many things. So and one of them is notification. So Christian or Andy want to explain what is notification? Why would people use this in to operationalize the Argo CD?
So it's kind of like from the high level, it's like Slack notifications, right? Like if you are doing things like if an application sync is successful, or if it's, I think for the most part people like failures, but a lot of people like notification if it's successful as well, right? Or if there's like a problem, or just kind of information on in terms of like pushing notifications, right? So like that's the idea of like Argo CD notifications. It'll send you information about the sync status, and for most people like that's like to Slack, right? Like that's kind of like the but you can also do things like email or a simple webhook, or whatever, right? Like you can trigger other things as well, but I think for the most part it's going to be some sort of chat, notification system.
Yeah, I think I did a PR to enable or fix um, SQS. In AWS, we have something called SQS, and you can send a message to SQS. I'm trying to get the
Yeah.
repo so people know what we're talking about. Um, I think I have the wrong version. I think the one in Argo Labs it says is archive. Um, you get the
Hmm.
yeah. It's the docs. We pull in the module, the Go module, and the docs, and it's incorporated into Argo CD. So we have a copy that we ship from Argo CD notifications, but it has a lot of triggers
Mhm.
supported. And it's an easy way to do that. And you can enable it into, oh, it's not here, but you can enable it through by putting information in the Argo apps. Like there's specific Argo apps that you want to get notifications. You can do it like on these apps, send it to Slack or send it to email, or you can have a global configuration. Is that correct? And Christian, I think I remember there's like a configuration that you can have, but also you can have it at the application, a specific Argo app.
You can have it a specific Argo app, yeah.
Oh,
And it's done, and it's done by label, like labeling, right? So if you label, so you set up the configuration, right, kind of centrally, and then depending on how you label your application, it'll send notifications to different backends.
Yeah, and it has a little of a templating syntax that you can start and
Yeah.
extract information on how you want to format that message that you send to Slack or SQS or email or the webhook that you have. So Argo CD notification is a push way of like informing
Yeah.
someone that there's something wrong. But a lot of other people go by the other method that we show, right? You have alert manager, alert based on Prometheus metrics. If there's something
Yeah.
wrong, and that's their standard way. So it's pick your own way of what you want to do. If you're already having a system that is already handling the alerts, I think the going the other route is okay. Argo CD notification. Have you seen a lot of those, Andy and Christian, from end
For
users being using Argo CD notification specifically?
I see it for more of like um on the last mile type of kind of application. So like at the end of like a pipeline and a sync, they get a notification of what the status of that sync is, and then not necessarily like
A
notifications.
critical.
Yeah, or
Okay.
like your pod going down or something. It's mainly used for kind of like that last mile type of notification, like yeah, sync was successful or the sync failed, right? Like you kind of want to know that kind of information, so kind of like that deployment aspect of it.
And then there's a section just to show like the example you pick Mattermost.
Yeah,
Can you, Randy, explain what Mattermost is?
think of it as
It's
a
Slack.
on-prem Slack.
It's
Slack.
open
Yeah.
source. It's like an open source.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the book shows how to, like, step by step you can go through it and
Yeah.
set up like Slack, or you can set up Mattermost. So the book it's a complete thing, right? So you don't going to like go to a website to learn how to do it. Like the website, they pick something
Yeah.
that can run in the Kine cluster.
Yep.
And I guess it's just
The
it
Slack.
supports
Yeah.
HTTP without the S, so that's a good thing, right? You were able to connect through the HTTP. Go ahead, Christian. I think I interrupted you.
Well, I said the for those who are curious how to set up a Slack, like it's actually pretty extensively documented.
Yeah.
I didn't want to like copy paste the documentation into the book. Like, there's no reason for that. So we decided to show something like how you would do this internally, right? Like, and so you can see the functionality of how this goes. I think most people are going to do like Slack is probably, or like 100%. So
Yeah, and with this type of books, I mean, educational organizations, right? A college or community college, they can like take the content of the book and actually like practice it in the course,
Yes,
right? They
yeah.
don't have to like go and find sign up for Slack and create a free tier or anything. Like, you can run everything in the same environment, Kubernetes
It's really
cluster.
meant. This entire book is meant to be kind of fully inclusive. I know there are other books out there that kind of suggest that you use remote services.
Yep.
We understand that many individuals don't have the resources financially to make that possible. So, as long as they have the compute capacity on their machine, have everything you need.
Yep. And it's set up on Kine cluster, right? So if it works on Kine and you have
Yep.
the recipe for Kine, it's good. So so the next thing to discuss is
Before
go
we
ahead.
move on, Ari has a little
Uh-oh.
note. Just started with Argo. Sorry, I'm just reading Ari's note. Just started with Argo CD notifications last week exclusively for sync notifications, primarily as an indicator as part of the CI/CD pipelines, because those missed the green check mark aspect when previous deployments happened push-based within the pipeline.
Interesting. Where are you sending the notification, Ari? To Slack? It says catch for anyone. Yes, Slack.
Yes.
Cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's also a psychological thing, like he's saying. If you move them from one system to GitOps, maybe people they're still used to getting that notification, or maybe going to some system, but it's always good to validation that you get that notification. If it's sent to a team Slack channel, right? People can say like that. People are like, pipelines are working, software is being shipped. and people feel proud at the end of the day, like they ship the stuff got out of the door.
Then they
With those
get
type of things.
alert fatigue at some point and start deleting
Yeah.
messages.
Yes, and then
Just
they start
wanted to be the
switching it
devil's
like,
advocate here. No
yeah, and then they
hard
switch it
feelings.
like, let's only get notification when it doesn't work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when it breaks.
And then what's the notification when it doesn't work? How did you get that second?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you monitor that? And it's not like, it's the thing about like, I don't know, funny story, but it sometimes happens. People put their monitoring system in the same region or availability zone that the system that they're monitoring, which
Yeah.
if the whole availability zone or the region is degraded, then who's going to notify? Like the monitoring system is also in there. So it's like putting Prometheus in the same
Lovely.
cluster
Yeah.
that
You
you are
back up on the
monitoring.
same server.
When the tree falls in the forest and nobody's around to hear it, it's not gonna be good.
Yeah.
What my
Um,
my favorite my favorite is the notification that unless something is wrong, it'll constantly fire. OpenShift, I'm looking at you. So there's a notification that that just constantly fires. Just if something's wrong, it won't fire.
Yeah, what is that
So
called?
I
There's
thought
a
that was-
saying
that was-
for it, and I'm
I-
blanking on it. Oh,
Yeah, I'm blank at it,
the
which
dead
is
man
which
switch
is
or
interesting.
something. Is that what
Oh,
it is?
that
Yeah,
man's,
yeah, yeah,
that
exactly, yeah.
man's switch. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, dead man switch. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So like if so, I that's always a fun one.
it's a
The dead man
watchdog,
switch
right?
one.
Watchdog
A
dies.
watchdog or yeah, watchdog. And you're like, hey, I don't hear anything.
Nanny,
Yeah.
the nanny service. We used to build a lot of those.
It's actually a really interesting analogy, dead man switch. If you guys want to explain a little bit for the ones who don't know, interesting system analogy, I'd say. I think it's about trains, right? Like I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a
Oh, where the turn comes from? I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah. It's basically it's a safety mechanism that like if there's no human involved or like if someone becomes it was for a train, I think if like the operator became incapacitated, then the dead man switch will basically
I
like
think
flip on,
I
right?
think they had to hold on to something, and then if for some reason he stopped.
Yeah, they had to hold on to
Yeah,
something.
okay.
Yeah,
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 exactly. Yeah.
like and then once like they're like holding like
Very
if they
nice
let
choice
go-
of words, Christian,
Yeah, yeah,
for
it is.
dead
It's a
man.
dead-
By the way,
it's a
incapacitated.
dead man switch because they're not holding on.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. They lose pressure, and then the switch obviously fires or opens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So motion detection in the airplane cabin for the pilots.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, yeah. It was like it was like airplane or trains or something like that. I forget what it was, but yeah,
Interesting.
funny.
But yeah, these
Yeah.
these systems, right, at scale, you're monitoring, like you want to have a centralized management system where you have multiple clusters, everything's centralized, and it's centralized monitoring on a different region or its ability zone that you're monitor or use a managed service that it gives you that. But talking about like managing and delegating stuff, when you're running Argo CD and you don't have a company like Acuity or CoFresh or maybe a cloud provider giving you Argo CD and taking care about making sure that those Argo CDs are like always running, there's no crash boot back off. What are the things that people need to be aware, Christian, and for high availability?
So for high availability, it really comes down to a few things, right? So one, you just know that Argo CD is stateless, pretty much, right? So that means like if a pod crashes and it restarts, you're fine, right? Like just in general. So always first and foremost, just make sure your Kubernetes cluster is highly available, right? Like you have just enough nodes and control plane nodes, just kind of like the underlying infrastructure. And then it should be okay, right? In terms of high availability. If you want, some people are still kind of nervous, right? They still want multiple pods, which is fine. And there's a way to set up high availability in terms of like having multiple pods behind the services, right? And that's really easily done with the Helm chart. So you kind of set the replicas, right? I want to set it to 2. I want to set it to 2. Whatever. and you can set it to auto scaling as well, right? So you can say auto scaling to minimum replicas is this many replicas. Um, so yeah, so I kind of call out here. This is high availability. I set the controller replicas to 1 specifically in this example because if you scale the application controller to anything beyond 1, you're enabling sharding.
Yep.
You just need to be aware of that. Yeah, and so you're not necessarily just switching it on for high availability, because as soon as you get more than 1 replica, you enable sharding.
What
right?
is
So, like,
sharding,
and that's like
Christian? Come on.
so.
We have it down
Yeah,
here.
yeah. So I have the in terms of sharding is that each controller takes care of syncing the sync process, right? So like if you have like 3 application replicas for the application controller, each controller takes a part of doing a sync, right? And how it determines that is just depending on how you set it up, right? What kind of algorithm you set it up. There's like and these were the only 2 available at the time. Right now, if you go to the documentation, I think there's like 5.
Yeah, there's the one that
So,
we contribute in AWS, the
yeah,
app-based algorithm. Yeah, the number based
yeah,
on the number of apps count.
yeah. So there's like there's I think round robin. No, default recommendation right now is legacy.
Yeah, West-based
Yeah,
algorithm that we did to like be more efficient in terms of like or not waste that much on it. But yeah,
yeah.
Christian, like you were explaining, and it's only the application controller. And
Mhm.
what is this pod is in charge is the use case is for multi-cluster, a lot of more remote clusters.
Yeah,
So
and
this
so
controller only
yeah.
handles 1 cluster at a time. Is the matching.
Correct. Yeah. So like if you have let's say let's make the math easy, right? Like let's say you set up the replica count to 3 and you have 3 clusters. Well, technically each pod will handle the syncing for 1 cluster. So it is actually depending on the number of clusters you have. Now, this is so like you have to do kind of a little mental math a little bit, because like if you have if you have like a dynamic system where you're adding and deleting clusters from an Argo CD system, you may have to tweak the algorithm. You have to use like maybe different kinds of algorithms, because the resharding or the recalculating takes some time, right? Like it takes resources to do that calculation. What someone I talked to, I think I forget what company, they're very static. So they basically say, okay, we have we always have 12 clusters, so we have 12 shards.
Yep,
And
and
each one of them takes care of it.
that's the I would say that's the most optimal way that you can configure it. Also, take into account that for folks, we're talking about the stateful set. The other components are like deployments. This one is the one that is a stateful set. And if you have like 10 clusters, you can assign 1 pod to each cluster. You cannot assign 2 pods to the same cluster. That's kind of like the design and the constraint. So that will be the best way, but it's the most cost one, because you will have like you have 10 clusters, you have 100 clusters, you have 100 pods, right?
Yeah.
And it might be that you don't need that many pods. You can say, well, I can have 1 pod that handles 10 light clusters, right? Or I can have like, yeah, I can have like 1 pod that handles 10 light clusters, and then 1 pod that handles like 2 big clusters. So if you have like 12 clusters, you can have 2 pods. So that way you can, and the heavy is like the number of apps, so you can use one of the other algorithms, and it will dynamically move the clusters from 1 pod to another based on the number of apps it has. So that's the other algorithms that we did. I think it was 2 years. I contributed that with the AWS. But the best thing is the most cost one, right? You have 1,000 clusters.
Yeah.
You have that pod. The thing is, the UI may not work, but if you're not using the UI, that's fine. And we have a blog post we did 50,000 apps.
Yeah, yeah, you did something on Canoe, right? On the Canoe website, you had
Yeah,
something about
yeah,
scalability.
yeah.
And
So it's to
yeah,
optimize, right? You don't want to have, as you scale many clusters, you don't want to have that many pods. And then another alternative, Adobe does this, is um, they can also chart based on an Argo CD instance. So they will create a new namespace called Argo CD 2, Argo CD 3, and then they will have like basically like system-wise split kind of thing. But in case that you want one Argo CD system, then the number of pods to the number of clusters, that's the matching thing. So that's like um, to scale. So this is, I think, guess right, Christian and Andy, that you put this in a different section because it's not about high availability, like you said. It's more
yeah,
about like be able to increase the horsepower, you can say, like of these app controllers
yeah, or you're
horizontally,
trying to,
right?
yeah, yeah, well, or you're trying to like best optimize it for, and by the way, even Michael Crenshaw, right, says at some point you're probably better off just running one controller pod with a ton of resources assigned to it, depending on what you're doing, right? Like he goes, sometimes that's just it, right? Like you're trying to do like this whole, calculation, and but like the hashing of the algorithm, sometimes is so intensive that you're probably just better off having one giant pod do it for you. So again, like everything in tech, it depends what you're doing.
Yeah, and then that you offer a section of like this is what you're referring to, that to scale
Yeah,
vertically you need to assign the requests.
yeah.
How much requests are you going to assign to the controller? So you can like I can you can see systems even like 2 gigs of memory, 3 gigs of memory, a
Hmm.
lot of CPU,
Yep.
because the amount of work that this controller is doing is like talking to a lot of like etcd databases through the Kube API to different clusters, all these resources being deployed. And then, right, Andy and Christian, the opposite of like it's watching over etcd changes and reacting to them. I think we discussed that last week, right? It's not just
Yeah,
watching
yeah.
Git, but it's reacting and having informer attached to these clusters. And also there's a whole cache system in Argo CD that we load into memory and Redis, I think, both. So it consumes a lot of memory. So that if you see Argo, see the app controller consuming a lot of memory, it's because of that. So yeah, like any, like I said to someone recently, I think it was this week, they told me they are having problems with Argo CD. Was slow, and that was all the information I had.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So
It's slow. Okay. Well,
I told them like, what do you mean
my
Yeah.
slow?
car doesn't work.
What do you mean by slow? Yeah.
And that syncs sometimes get stuck and they have to do a hard sync. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm working with them, telling them like install the Grafana dashboard, find where what is, if it's the sync is slow, how many syncs, how thousands of syncs are you doing per minute? Like the metrics are there. You can measure what's the pods are crashing, how much memory is consuming. If you don't have limits, right? If you have limits on the CPU, on the memory, you will see OOMs. So treat it as any other business Kubernetes application, production level, right? Becomes another Kubernetes application that you apply the same practices that you apply to the other apps when you say my payment system is slow. Okay, is it the pod? Is it like the node? Is it the CPU? And those type of things.
Network.
Network. And there's a comment in the chat. Let's see the time. I will take that one. I would argue the 2 is enough so that thin scratches can recover on their own. 3 will always be working pod while the other one restarts, unless you don't have monitoring for crash pods, then you might not have anyone realizing pods are crashing. So Matt, that's a little bit correct for deployments. The app controller is a stateful set. So if pod 5 dies, pod 5 needs to come back to serve that controller, that cluster. Another cluster, another pod will not pick up the workload, like a deployment. So it's a little bit tricky. Say stateful set. There's actually Christian, right? Red Hat did some work. Is in the repo experimental on running the app controller as a deployment and having a config map as a state. I don't know where that experiment was, but they were trying to do it in a way that it would work like Matt was saying, like it's a deployment so any of the pods can pick up the work. So it's a bit more complicated, but the stateful set, it's the pods assignments, it depends on the algorithm charting. Go ahead, Christian.
No, yeah.
But I don't.
That
I don't know where that experiment was on the deployment.
Yeah,
Maybe,
I don't know
if
where
got
that
far.
went. I think they pivoted over to the Argo City agent. I think Jan was working on that.
Agents.
That's exactly what they did, Christian. Yep.
Yeah, we moved to agent, and that way we split. It's a better scaling mechanism to move that controller into the spoke cluster, and the heavy work happens over there. Right?
Yeah. And then at that point, you don't have to worry about sharding.
Yeah, and I think that's it. Was the last? Yeah, sharding was the last topic. We covered that, and then that's it. Thank you for the questions and the comments today. Was very useful.
Yeah, that was good.
Participation.
And next week is the last chapter, so yes, make sure.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I know.
So yeah,
We
if
will
Christian
miss
and
you
Andy has a
guys.
demo that they're doing for KubeCon around
Yes,
Argo, you can bring it
exactly.
along.
It's not the longest chapter as well, so we can fly free. I don't know, up to you guys to bring anything you'd like to share.
It's kind of apropos that this is the last chapter and this is the last one before KubeCon, because it's like then you can pick up the book at KubeCon if you're going to KubeCon.
Why didn't you time that, Christian? Right?
Yeah. No. Oh yeah. We did. We absolutely did.
There's a few topics right in this one, like
my first question, I think, from the first
like,
chapter. My first question from the first chapter. And Andrew said we'll come to that, and it took quite a bit of time.
Yeah,
I was actually happy to see one of my projects mentioning the Gyros Bridge project. Something that crazy idea that I started. But yeah, we can talk about different aspects here. There's a different catch-all kind of like other considerations type of thing. This chapter 14, or you can bring a demo, or we can do an AI demo of asking Argo to deploy a rollout, or why is my Argo not working, and an agent will tell us why. We'll figure it out next week. So thank you so much to everyone that joined today, and I will see you next week.
Yeah,
thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Happy Thursday.
So nice to see you, and happy to be back and see you next week.
So glad that you feel better, Sabi.
Bye.
Welcome.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye.
Yep.